Today guys, going to be looking at this big girl here. So we have a problem with the gearbox, and this sounds a little bit like the dual power or the high-low, some people call it obviously. It is rattling very badly in the low dual, so I presume the planet gears are gone on the actual hub inside. But there's also a hydraulic problem with this tractor that we were never able to get to the bottom of. So today I'm going to just check pressure. Sorry, it's a bit dark, but I'm going to check some pressures here and see where I'm losing pressure on my hydraulic circuit. I know the pressures I should have, and I have a couple of gauges here now too, so I'm just going to check it out in relation to the gauges, and I'm going to show you then how I get on and what pressures I'm getting and what I'm not, and the little issues I'm seeing with the tractor might help somebody else out, because I know these give a lot of little hydraulic problems here and there, and can turn very deep with cracked internal pipes, etc. So I'm hoping I don't have them problems, but you never know. Yes, so firstly for testing, okay, we have inside in the cab, we have the top of the gearbox. This whole unit here, the oil flows through this to get down to the high-low pack, and to check the low pressure side, where there's a pump internally in this tractor down at the very bottom of the housing, if you want to call it, and it lifts pressure. It just lifts the oil and gives pressure up to, I think, around 10 bar, and pressurizes this system just for the halo and a couple of other basic circuits, and gives an oil feed to the front for the main high pressure hydraulics. So in here is, I think it's a 5mm Allen key on the side of this, and this is where you screw into to check your pressure. So I'm just going to get the gauge now with the end, which is suited exactly for it. I'm going to screw it in here. I'm going to run the tractor and check the pressures, and we'll see what we get. Also, when I am here, I have been informed that there's a spring in one of these, which is a pressure relief control, and the spring can lose tension over time and can cause issues. So I'm going to see what pressures I have and see can I do anything with that or replace that obviously as well. Okay, so it's not a 5, it's a 6. Yep, hopefully this will take it. That's a bit tight for that ratchet. Oh, I'll go get another one. It's a big one. So this connection here is on a solid line. I'm sure that you can get a connection, a quick fit, but this is the one I got at the end of, actually, because it suits the job. So I'm going to screw this in from in underneath the side of the tractor, just in till I get it in, and I'll just turn the entire pipe. So now that should be sufficient enough to show us the pressure we're looking for. So I'm going to start the tractor and see what we get. PSI, and I pretty much have that. Maybe a little bit short, maybe 140, maybe just over. That's the hay joule. Still holding steady. Gauge PTO now. How much difference now? Back to the low joule. Overdrive. Raise slightly once forward drive is on, so that means it's not taking oil. Keep the forward drive off, it takes oil to keep it off, so we're losing oil pressure, a little bit of oil pressure there. Very small, but we are losing. Bringing me up to about 100 and what I guess about 145 bar, up to 145 PSI. Drive off again. So this test will be done cold, and the tractor is probably in and around 7 or 8 degrees Celsius at the moment. That's the weather, so it's been laying all day, so it should be in and around that. It's not really cold, but that 150 PSI stands for it being cold. If the oil gets warm, the pressure is going to drop. So I'm happy enough with that pressure test for now, and then I'm going to do a high pressure test now and see where we get from it. In case you can't hear me before I start testing this now, before I start the tractor, I'm going to do a high pressure test. So this is the high pressure gauge, obviously. That's one thing you have to make sure of when you're testing. Always make sure your gauge is fit for the pressure you're testing, obviously, if you know what you're doing. So on a high pressure test, I'm going to be looking at probably the best part of maybe 2,500 PSI in comparison to 150 PSI on the other gauge, which is a significant difference. So if you put the wrong gauge on, or maybe some of the newer gauges, a digital readout, you won't have to worry about that. But in any of these older gauges, just a standard analog gauge that works with just a needle and a diaphragm, you're going to destroy the gauge if you put it under the wrong pressures. But anyway, to get on with it, I'm going to start the tractor now. We're going to see what we're at. I have this hooked up to one of these spool valves. I'm going to activate one of these and see what pressure I'm getting from the front pump, and hopefully I should have between 2,500 and 2,700 PSI on this gauge. And when I do that, yeah, we're just going to see what we have there. So I'm getting a reading of 2,000, around 2,600, I think. 2,600 and, yeah, between 2,650 and 2,700. Well, actually 2,000, just over 2,600 PSI. So that's perfect as well. So pressure's holding good there. So I'll just run the lift now while I'm doing it, and the steering. And I have no pressure once I use my steering. It does a priority. So and the lift is priority. So as the lift stopped, steering. The steering takes significant amount of pressure off it too. Steering's on the high pressure system. And the steering has priority over anything on the rear, so that's standard to see that. It comes back pretty fast. The pump recovers fairly quickly. So I have an issue with this on the rear end we'll speak about now. just turn this light around. See what I'm talking about. So this, my lift here, right, is this light position, right. Very bad lighting here. So steering obviously is high pressure and it gets priority over anything on the rear of the tractor. But my lift doesn't activate properly, so when I let my lift down, it may do it now, but we'll just check and see. But most of the time I go to move this handle, when I move this handle, the lift doesn't move. It's moving now, but a lot of the time I actually have to turn the steering to get the lift to move. So I think I have a valve problem as well. So I'm going to go through all these things now and see where we're at. I've got a couple of probe ends to put into the back of the tractor, into the remote valves. And these are so I can heat the oil up in the tractor at the moment. So I have a gearbox problem with the high-low shift, and obviously I tested it there cold, and now I'm going to test it hot. But to heat it up, I'm going to use this lane. This is a little bit of quarter lane. This is actually used for the quick hitch of the digger. So this is restricting. So it's either use this or use flow control regulators that I could turn the oil down into a small orifice. So with hydraulic oil, when you put hydraulic oil under pressure and put it through a small gap, it will naturally heat. If you pressurize oil and allow it to escape, it'll create a hell of a lot of heat. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to heat the tractor up, because I can't drive the tractor at the moment to heat the oil. So instead, I'm going to put these ends into this, just like so, and put them in here like this here on both ends. And when I put this into the back of the tractor, I'm going to put it in coming out from one and returning on the other. And I'll draw a diagram now of that now in a moment to explain how that works. So when the oil comes out, it'll come through this, but it'll come back into the tractor through this one, and that will in turn with the small size piping. If I didn't want this to heat up, I could put a large hose on this, and it would take the tractor a very long time to heat up, and also may not heat up at all. But with this small hose, forcing a huge amount of oil through this small hose is going to heat the oil, hydraulic oil, up for me. So I draw a diagram of how that goes. I'm just going to tighten these up here now. So this diagram is very basic, very quick. So this is the oil reservoir on the lower part of the tractor. This is the fixed pump in the bottom end of the tractor, right? So this pump lifts oil to the front where the main pump gets it. So there's a lot more in between all this, but this is just a very basic diagram so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So this pump here can give trouble over time, but we think this is okay. This possibly is okay. I don't think there's any damage to this pump. This pump has been rebuilt. This is the main high pressure pump. So this pump will only put up in and around 10 bar, 150 psi. This pump puts up 2,600 psi. And whenever this one here feeds this one sends the main pressure to your remote valves at the rear of the tractor. Now inside in the cab you have two levers which will work either way. So how this works is you have things called slices. These hydraulic slices work. This is your remote valves at the rear of the tractor. So what you can actually plug into, which you'll see when I actually put the pipes on it. So there's a female connection on each one, and you can pop your lane into it, whatever you're looking to do. So how this works is the oil flow coming into this, there's a constantly oil pressure behind this here, and then whenever you activate one of these, this pump kicks in. So we can send oil out through one of these by moving this lever, and when we move that lever, automatically you're moving a lever. So let's say we're moving the valve in this one to allow oil out, but when you move it that way, you're opening this valve to allow oil back in. So I'll take my pipe and put it on here, and then I'll plug it in here as well. So I'm going to put a loop like this. The oil will flow out around back in through here, and when it goes in through here internally in the valve, the oil will return back down to the reservoir. And you can do that with any of these. So I could also put this one on, and I could move the lever in such a way that I could have oil flowing back on this one. So I could put this pipeline here instead. Because those levers in the cab, when you're looking at them, if you're looking down at them, we say, you have a neutral position in the center. I draw this neutral. So there's a kind of a slot both sides, and the handle can move either that way or sit in the middle. Usually in its normal resting position, it's in the middle. So when we move that, that's what I'm saying with this. This is the lever. We move that handle this way. You're automatically opening another valve here on the back that you can't obviously see. And then if you move that one that way, if you plug onto either of these here while this is in the neutral position, no oil will flow. So in this position here, if I don't move this handle, no oil can flow here, because this is in the neutral position. These two valves here are in neutral if I do not move this handle. So there's a very basic description of what's going on. There's a lot more going on here. This high pressure pump supplies the steering. The steering gets priority over all these things like the lift on the rear, the remote valves. It gets priority over everything. The high-low shift is supplied by this smaller pump, which is a lower pressure. And we have the PTO, there is the trailer brakes, and there's a lot of other parts on the circuit that I'm not going to go into. So we're just going to try and diagnose what's wrong with this. Going to heat the oil up, get some pressures and see how we go. Exactly what I'm looking for. It's getting very warm already, so this could get very hot. But with the cold oil flowing through it should keep it cool. We'll see how it goes. I'll monitor and see how it goes over the next few minutes. See how long it takes as well. So I'll start a stopwatch now. There we go. So that's just going now about a minute, so we'll add a minute on at the end. So after a test of just over an hour, I have oil temperature here at around, I don't think this is working properly, but it showed me 67 a moment ago. I don't know what's right or what's wrong, but I think the batteries mightn't be great. But anyway, it's too hot for me to touch, so I'm presuming it's hot enough. The oil got really watery in it, and I found a couple of leaks as well, so that's good. So I'm going to do some pressure tests on it now and see where we are. So testing the low pressure side, I'm down at 140 psi. So you can see my steering is slightly heavy. I'm using oil, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of change in the gauge. So my four-wheel drive is currently on, which means it's not using any oil. The PTO is on, which is using oil. So I'm going to switch the four-wheel drive back off. And you can see it drop slightly and come back. So it's not showing me anything serious. No serious kind of major drops in pressure. I've left the remote valve on the back, can hear the difference in the tractor when I let it off. It's actually moving the oil the opposite way now. You can hear the steering takes away from it on priority. Steering has priority over that. There's the brakes on now. And the brakes are also use high pressure oil, but it's not a major drop, like it's not the high low shift. That's it in high and it recovers, so I'm not really concerned about that. It's in low now and it's still not really a major problem. There's a drop in it when it's rolls, so I'm not too worried about that. Tractor is warm, as I said, but and I've this kind of problem with my hydraulics on the rear as well. I'm going to do a high pressure test now and see where I'm at and see can I maintain pressure. I'm going to put in the gauge alongside the other one flowing and see if I'm going to lose anything. But this here at the moment seems to be staying fairly steady. It's recovering every time, but slowly. It's getting heavy again. There's a lot of fluctuation in the gauge, a lot of fluctuation of pressure, and that's due to not getting enough oil. So just got these from John Deere, these two springs here. So I'll explain what these are doing. In the side of this shift cover in here, there's a pressure relief, and it is for the lower charge pump, lower transmission oil pump, if you want to call it, or lift pump. So it's picking up oil, and the springs that's in here, which are these new ones, are controlling the pressure to keep it at around 150 psi. So since my pressure is a little bit lower than that, I've been told that sometimes over time and heat can cause these springs to lose a bit of tension, and then you lose a little bit of pressure. So I bought new springs. They worked out not too bad. I think the two springs worked out around 25-30 euro. So I'm going to replace them here. I'm going to take them out of here, put new ones in, and we're going to try the shift cover back in the tractor and see what happens, and see will it make any significant difference. That's the boy. So what I'm doing here is I'm just roughly putting my hand up against this just to check how much actual tension them springs are pushing against. I have no idea how much tension there is, but if you can sometimes feel and give that your hand is fit to push them springs back and feel it returning, then you know that the springs tension isn't very high. Because if you had a high spring tension, you took out a spring, you didn't know how much tension or how well compressed that spring was, and you didn't check it, it could just take this out and just fire, you could hurt you, So I'm just checking it like this. I'm going to screw it up behind here. So now I'll slowly take it out. There's my two springs there. It's actually a significant bit of wear on that spring, whatever that means. I don't know if you can see the shine, but there's actually wear on the edge of the spring. Everything looks normal, but I will I'll give that a quick clean out. I'll just put them up against these new ones. The spring here the new spring is quite a bit longer, and I was actually thinking that this spring would be the least chance of this spring being, this would be the one that wouldn't be giving trouble, but it looks like it's actually pretty bad. Like it's a loss of at least 4 to 5 mil on that spring. So the tension is not as it should be. Now we'll check the other spring, and it's significant as well. It's quite a lot actually. So you can see how badly compressed the spring is. So you can see how small the coils of the spring, how much it has went down over time. So I'm hoping for some sort of result out of this, so that my pressure is down, but it's not about the pressure, it's about how much oil that it can push to the front of the tractor, and this could be a significant difference, and we'll just have to see. Right, so now I'm going to try to take the rest of this apart. So I want to take out the main valve that sits in here that the springs keep back. So these wee switches here, you don't really need to tighten these. So I've just noticed there a moment ago that that's actually loose, and it's loose because it's plastic. So if you tighten that, you'll probably break it. So you literally only need to put enough tension on that to keep it sealed. So spring doesn't look very good either. So I'm just going to push out the, see what else is in there. So there's actually another little floating switch here. That sits against the spring, and then I can see the valve here. Sorry, knock it out. There we go. I'll just give all this a little clean. So by the way, this is just a degreaser. So it's just like a panel wipe, or whatever you want to call. Some people call it nearly like a brake cleaner. It's not like brake cleaner, it's a wee bit different, but it's great for cleaning parts. So the pressure that I have behind this was a slight bit lower, but having a slight bit lower pressure means a huge amount of less oil, a litre per minute flowing in the same circuit. So I'm hoping that with higher pressure here, maybe this might help solve problems with not enough oil flowing to the tractor's hydraulics. That's what the actual problem is we do not have enough oil. I don't think I have any leaks as yet. I don't think I have any major leaks. All the pressures were holding up okay, but when it heats up and the viscosity of the oil goes down, the oil gets lighter, we can't keep a pressure up. So the pump is working all the time trying to keep oil to the front of the tractor and can't keep it. So something as simple as things like that can create a huge difference in terms of keeping pressures right. So we're going to look into that now and see where I go from here, and yeah, we'll do a test on it then and see exactly what we can determine from the test. So I just started the tractor with the new springs installed, and we are at just over 150 psi, which is an improvement on where it was. The tractor's only idling cold. Now in rev it does pick up quite significantly where it wasn't previously. So I'm just going to leave this running now for a little while on a high idle, let it warm up, check the pressures again, and we'll go from there. So the tractor's now warm, and I still have 145-ish psi. On idle, my steering is still getting a little bit tight, so it feels like it's running out of oil. I have a spool valve on the rear using oil. My high pressure has stayed the same, so I still have an issue. So the springs haven't solved any problems. Now on high RPMs I can keep enough oil, but I think this tractor should be well capable of keeping high pressure without higher RPMs. So with that RPMs probably in and around 1,000, I'd say, the tractor's actually not too bad. But the tractor isn't completely hot. It's hot, but it's not completely hot. And if it was completely hot, it would be a different story. So the tractor's near ready to be split now, so we're just going to get into loosen off the cab. And just before we do that, just looking at this here, this is the oil cooler. So this is the hydraulic oil cooler, and this is a hydraulic oil reservoir. So this reservoir helps whenever there's a lot of hydraulic work happening. This reservoir holds a certain amount of oil, and that keeps the main hydraulic pump supplied with oil at all times. So if it uses a lot more at a certain time, or if it's on low idle, that it'll have enough oil to keep it going for short periods. But what I'm going to do now, before I do any more, is I want to check to see is this full, because this is essential to make sure that obviously oil stays in the hydraulic pump. And since I'm having hydraulic problems that I haven't fully got to the bottom of, I want to see how much oil is in this, or if there's any in it at all. And it might tell me a little bit more about maybe what's wrong. Is it not getting oil up to this, or is this not holding oil, or is something using too much oil? So that's what we think, something's using too much oil. Things seem fairly dry here. Doesn't seem to be much sign of oil. I was hoping for that to be full. So before I go taking it off, I'm going to take this pipe off instead. Get it opened. And see how much oil comes out of this pipe. There's definitely oil in it. But not a lot. So obviously that's a tiny amount in comparison to what should be in it. So just got some lifting equipment set up, and it went pretty well. So just got a lever hoist off eBay actually, and a couple of slings. Worked out very cheap. So I'm going to soon lift the cab off, just have to loose the bolts and we lift her up. So as you can see, cab's up. Just roll the tractor forward there by hand. And a wee bit of a mess, clean up a wee bit of oil and stuff. It's the nature of the work. So we are at this point here. You have your clutch housing. So there's your bell housing. Your clutch is in here. This is the shift cover, high-low shift cover. So this cover here distributes the oil down to the high-low pack. So this is why I'm having gearbox issues at the moment. And I'm going to have to split it here. So that's where I'm at, and enough is done for today. So I'm going to get stuck back in probably tomorrow, and we're going to get all these pipes off here, both sides. I have to empty the diesel out if there's too much diesel in it. I have to take the auxiliary tank off, and I have to then split it here. Just open it up here. I'll have to support the rear end. I'm not just sure how I'll do it yet. I might actually roll it back slightly. I might be a wee bit too far forward. If I go back a little bit and then come on, move the front on out. So see, anyway, walk it out as I go, and I'll take some footage of that as I'm going. So I set up this here. I was trying to drain fuel from the front tank to the back through this small line here, but it's just a bit slow. So decided to pull out the big guns. I took the large siphon tube, and I'm just siphoning straight to the can here now. So this is going to take a lot less time. So a brief run through on this here. I didn't go on video everything I had to take off the tractor because it's just a little bit too much. It's just mainly pipe work as well, little fidgety things that it's kind of actually hard to video, to be honest. So I showed some of the things of taking the bolts out of here, etc. and that. So what I've done is just before you split the unit, I'll explain. So in here is, this is the high-low pack here showing. You can see it in red. That's it actually exposed once you take the shift cover off, which is not very easier to see now there's no cab. So I'm going to be splitting the tractor here. This section, as I explained, is the bell housing for the clutch. So this is of no interest to me at the moment. We don't have clutch problems. I want to split the tractor here so I can access the lower oil pump and the high-low pack. And what I've done is just a tip for those who may not have done it before, but splitting a tractor is obviously you have weights to balance, and so I've used this old beer keg to support the front. As far as I can remember from the last time, it's back heavy, so I'm using a jack at the back holding up the hitch so that the tractor can't flop back. So what I'll do first of all is I'll slowly loosen. I've left 2 bolts in it, one on this side and one on the far side. I'll loose these slowly, and once I get it separated, I'll slowly start removing the bolts. Make sure that it's supported. I'm going to put the jack in underneath the front of this as well, just to make sure it can't fall forward, but I'm nearly certain it isn't. It's heavy on the back. I'll put the jack in just for security to make sure it can't. And I'll slowly pull it apart, roll the wheels back. I'm going to roll it back in there underneath the cab out of the way so I can get in and access the high-low pack in here and take it all out. So I'm very close to that point now. Hopefully I'm going to get this split now in the next half an hour, I'd say. Just on a guess, and as long as I don't hit any other more roadblocks. But I've removed everything. There's even 2 bolts in here as well, and they're out too. So I'm near there, and I'll just set the camera up and you'll just see roughly what's going on, and I'll explain more then when I get in there. Right, so that took a lot less time than I thought it was going to take. That's probably all of 10 to 15 minutes. That is apart. As I explained previous, I will see where my light is, but I'm just going to show you. So this is the high-low, this red part, and I'm going to take that out now. Check everything inside that. We have some planetary gearing and stuff inside it that I think is damaged, is what the noise was in the tractor before we decided to split it. So yeah, so I'm going to get this out now in a few minutes. I have to take all these pipes out. Just for information that may help others, is if you're ever splitting one of these tractors, it's very important to check all these pipes. These tractors were known to split these steel pipes internally. Like they would split right up the centre and blow holes in them and things like that. Some people know, some people would not know. So just always check these if you're splitting your tractor. So Can't see anything wrong just yet. Small bit of damage there, but because the bush is a little bit marked, but I don't see anything major. So we'll pull this apart now and see if there's anything more we can see. It seemed that the noise was in this, but it's no good. Yep, there's the problem right there. So that would have what done it. It managed to break the teeth off the gear. And that's what the noise was. Right, it was if it was in low joule, if it was in the low, in the low of the halo, if you had it in your low joule power or whatever you want to call it, low speed. It was meshing with this gear here, and you had a massive rattle. So I don't know where the parts of this is, but I'm going to go looking for them now. I think they must have fell down to the bottom of that, or they're in here, so I don't see them at the moment. I presume they fell down, but that's all that's wrong. It actually looks like it didn't even damage any of the rest of it. All the gears are actually clean. But it wrecked that. What's the result? So the next move is to try and find out why. Found the problem now. Need to find out what caused the problem. So I'm going to go looking for the parts of it anyway, to make sure I get them out of the bottom end. I don't want steel like that sitting in the bottom end. Everything else looks actually alright. The bearings got a wee bit of wear on them, but I don't know how, because it literally did no hours since it was last apart. But that's just a genuine fail. Like, there's no really wear as such on that gear. It just decided to break, which is a pity because it had to be split for that. Anyway, we'll go and look for the parts now. See nothing obvious here. Obviously this is 4-wheel drive pack, and down below it drops down so that it's immersed in oil, but I can't seem to find anything in there, my hand. So I wanted to take the 4-wheel drive out anyway, so I'm probably just going to take it out now, and then most likely we'll find the parts of it down in the oil pan. Because it can't really get out the back, as there's a channel here and it's blocked. The likelihood of the metal getting that far back would be, unless there was huge amounts of it, it would be a little bit difficult for it. Yeah, there's actually metal in there, but it's from a previous problem we had. I'll actually see if I can get some of that out. That's not really what anybody wants to see, that, but I do know that's from back in the day when we had a major issue with this tractor where it broke a lot of things. So I presume that's stuff that's kind of washing up over time. I'm just going to take all that now, just out of that hole. Might actually just take that bung out, might be easier. Yeah, but welcome to the world of John Deere. I think it was negligence of the previous owner that caused a lot of these problems, but anyway, we can't go there now. So And so, as I presumed, there's the pieces of my gear. Another piece. Should be 3 teeth. 2, 3. There'll be another couple of bits, but mainly that's it. 3 teeth. And that's them. So to remove the 4-wheel drive, it's a matter of moving first the prop shaft. So you just loose all your bolts out here, right around. Here, this will slide off. 3 bolts here, take that flange off, shaft comes out and pack drops down. So I'm going to just get that shaft off now. So folks, this is where we're at. We did a lot of dismantling here. I ended up taking out one of the gearbox shafts, and here it is. So that there piece goes on the end of this. I have a fourth gear synchro issue, so I'm going to change the synchro probably now when we're in here, since it takes so much to split this tractor. So we had bearing issues here in this housing. We had this idler here on the front of this casing, and the bearing, the tapered roller bearing on the front of it, needs to be shimmed up. So quite a bit of shimming and checking to do on all these shafts. All need to be checked. Obviously there's some obvious basic play you can see in different places, but otherwise the rest of it's I just had to work it all out. We have absolutely nothing in here now at this stage, so taking out the PTO brake, PTO pack, high-low pack, 4-wheel drive, everything is out. And I'm going to just show you now in a minute of all the other parts that I'm dealing with and what we're going to rebuild before we put everything back together.